Today's hot sheet, I'm discussing housing inventory for the past week, how far mortgage rates would have to fall for a boost in mortgage refis, and who benefits most from the new SALT cap increase. Today is Monday, July 7, 2025. I am Byron Lazine, and the hot sheet starts now. Live from Connecticut. Happy post 4th. Hope you had a great weekend. Let me know which market you're tuning in live from. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We certainly saw something I didn't expect in inventory. I'm going to get to it in just a second. Steve from Naples. I may bump into you tomorrow, Steve. I'll be down there for a day. Fidel, good morning. Brad, good morning. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Sadie, Fairview, Utah. Spencer in from Northwest Arkansas. And Justin, Denver. All right, guys. Let's jump into it. We start every week on the hot sheet with inventory. I saw a shocking number in this inventory report from Altos. Real time. I love Altos because it gives us real time look. A lot of the other inventory reports that we get are rear view mirror. It's kind of like when, the Fed's looking at CPI and they're looking at owner's equivalent rent. It's all rear view mirror. It's not relevant to what's going on in the real estate market today. That's why Bill Pulte is tweeting out on X, the FHFA director. He's tweeting out nonstop. We're at 1.6 inflation, and the Fed's clinging on to this 2.4 because they believe the tariff boogeyman is going to come out and, I don't know, do what? When we're 3 months into the tariff boogeyman and it hasn't increased the hard data on inflation. There's a belief from the Fed that maybe it will in the future. But if you really look and dig into inflation, you pull out owner's equivalent rent, we're below the target of 2%. So there's a lot going on with that. But one of the reasons that he's tweeting this out, it's like, hey, let's lower these rates. The numbers are a lot lower than what people thought that they would be. And to me, when I look at inventory here over the last week, I'm like, wow, this number just jumped up higher than I expected. Okay, the weekly inventory change comes in up 22,000 for the last week. Now, I thought we had a chance of getting to 900,000 on inventory. We are now beyond the low levels of 2019, the last normal year. But if you look at what happened in the end of June and then into July here, we had this flattening out on the curve. Shout out Dr. Fauci, flattening out of the curve here on inventory. And so it seemed like we might go back to kind of a normal trend through the summer, like we saw in 2019, where inventory just flattens out. But then this past week happens and we make up ground. That same similar type of increases we were seeing earlier in the year, the type of increases we saw throughout 2024, where we increased on inventory all the way into October. Our peak was October of last year at 739,000, where if you look at 2019, the peak was kind of like now, right? The peak was essentially July before you started to see the decline, 2019 being a normal year. Well, we're still on the uptick. Will this be the peak is the question. But this is a sharp increase on active inventory. It's up 31% year over year, up 22,000 just in the past week alone. This gives me more hope that, yeah, we're going to get into the 900,000s, the low nines, like we saw in 2019. We're only 100,000 behind as a country 100,000 where we were in the summer of 2019. Why is 2019 so significant? It was a market that was before, it was before 2020. It was a market that, yeah, sellers had slight control in a lot of markets, maybe more control in some markets than others, but it was pretty normal. We were out of the 2018, interest rate increases that we saw in 2018. The market was moving. There was fluidity. There was a belief in, the value that buyers were buying. Some thought they were maybe buying a little too high. They certainly weren't, obviously, with what transpired years later. But 2019 was, for all accounts, normal, natural, not influenced by the money printing machine from Jerome Powell. And so when we compare to 2019 and we're getting back to those levels, it's a really good, healthy sign for inventory. Inventory, which has been touted as being 5, 7 million, 3 million homes short to meet demand. Better put affordability in front of that. Affordable homes, because I think if you dump 5,500,000 homes into the market, you're not going to solve the problem. 645,000 to 652,000 was the increase at this point last year. So 200,000 more homes active, single family, on the market right now than we saw last year. That leads to one of the reasons why home sellers are cutting price at a bigger rate than they were last year. 40.6% of home sellers, percent of properties with recent price reductions comes in at 40.6. It's the highest level we've seen since late 22, when we had the dramatic increase on mortgage rates for Jerome Powell playing catch up on inflation, which he called transitory at the beginning. Playing politics, maybe, is one of the reasons he was calling that transitory. 40.6% is the price reduction rate right now versus a 38% at the same time last year. You get more homes on the market for longer, which is what we're seeing now across the country. Not obviously the story in pockets of the Northeast and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, more homes sitting on the market longer, you will see an increase in price reduction. Certainly when this number, total pending home sales, is not that much above where we were last year. It is above 396,000 versus 381,000 homes in contract. We've seen a drop off from the peak levels in late May and early June when we were in the 415,000 range. We do expect this number to continuously decline throughout the year. You can, like we saw in 24, have little pockets that it jumps up on the way down. That should be mostly mortgage rate influenced. But we're coming in at 396,000 versus 381,000 last year. If we look at the weekly pending home sales, obviously being a holiday week, coming out of 67,000 versus basically 68,000 last year. So down about 1,000 on the weekly. We saw a sharp decline, obviously, in the week, 2 weeks post July 4 last year. We're on that decline right now. Do we see the uptick on weekly pendings as we get to the later half of July and into August that we did see last year? That obviously remains to be seen, but weeklies are down. That being despite the fact that we are seeing, a huge increase in mortgage applications compared to last year. Okay, 22 straight weeks right now of positive year-over-year data. Now, keep in mind, 2024 was the lowest level of mortgage application data we've seen since 1995. We hit bottom in 2024. We're still relatively close to that bottom level, but it is 22 now straight weeks of positive year-over-year data. We're going to need multiple more weeks, if that makes any sense. We're going to need a lot more weeks of double-digit year-over-year growth to really get out of the basement here on mortgage applications. But it's a good sign. We've had 9 negative readings week over week for the year, 5 flat prints 9 straight weeks of double-digit year-over-year growth. Need a lot more of that. We've also had 11 positive week-over-week readings on mortgage application. And so here's the question. Does this mean that existing home sales are returning to the low levels of 2014, which were around 4.75? And the answer here is no, not exactly. Mortgage applications serve as a trend. Okay. They historically align closely with existing home sales. However, this data set that we're looking at, to show real growth, it needs to consistently increase by double digits for several months before we could safely say we're out of the 4 million on existing home sales and getting closer to 4.75. Now, several months could mean, if this trend continues over the next 6 months, we end at Danielle Hale, Realtor.com's prediction, said on Knowledge Brokers podcast. She said, I'm sticking to 6% at the end of the year. We saw some signs here recently that investors, look at what Wall Street's happening. Money's coming off the sidelines. You got mergers and acquisitions happening at a rapid rate. There have been more mergers and acquisitions the last 3-4 months than the last couple of years of the last administration. Mergers and acquisitions are on fire. And it's not just Silicon Valley, it's everywhere. Silicon Valley was quiet in 23 and 24, on fire. This brings investment in. It creates a stronger future job outlook. We're seeing stock market hit all-time highs recently. There's momentum with this big bill. We're gonna get into a little bit of that with the SALT stuff here. But there's momentum there that investors believe there's going to be a lot of money over the next couple of years. Okay. There's going to be a lot of money, that big tax break, more money to spend, or not tax break, but maintaining the tax break and not allowing taxes to go up. All this creates belief that there's going to be money, flowing through the market over the next couple of years. And so if you get this decline, and we saw this with the 10-year a couple of weeks ago. It popped up the end of last week, and we're gonna have some more tariff talk here this week. But you get a decline throughout the next 6 months. You get double-digit growth on mortgage purchase application, and you go into the spring market. This is an if scenario. But you go into the spring market next year, kind of clocking in at sub 5 for some borrowers, or sub 6 rather, high 5s. Then yeah, I think you could get to that 4.75 mark, which is just a huge increase. Okay. From where we're at 4 million existing home sales, 750,000 more. That's 1.5 million sides. Think about what that does to local economies and particularly, obviously, those attached to real estate. It's unbelievable that we've had this type of double-digit growth and rates haven't dropped below 6.6 all year. That's basically low 6.6s is the low level for the year. Okay. Now this number will probably increase too. If these rates continue to decline. They actually went down last week. That's new listings went down. Holiday week, of course, 69,700 versus 71,000 the week, same week last year. So there you go. There's your outlook on inventory. Huge increase on inventory as homes sit longer. That will create more pressure on price across the country. Obviously, that is a market specific scenario. All right. Rates. How far do they have to go before loan officers stop picking up agents' calls because they're too busy calling everybody for refinances? Here's the number of mortgage borrowers where a refinance could lower their interest rate by at least 0.75 percentage points. There are 25.2 million borrowers that are in the money for a refi when the average 30-year fixed rate was 2.8%. So that was a long time ago. Okay. 1.3 million borrowers were in the money for a refi when the average 30-year fix was 6.77 just a week or two ago. Okay. So Well, look at the dramatic difference from where we were on refinances. 25 million were available, were in the money rather, where they could get a 0.7 percentage drop back in July of 21. And just recently, a couple weeks ago, only 1.3 were in the money, saving a 3/4 of a point. So we've seen a significant swing. Now, if we get back to 6%, like we did in September of 24, that created 4.3 million borrowers, the highest level since, the end of 21, early 22. 4.3 million borrowers at 6% were in the money. So this can swing up considerably. You can add 3 million borrowers who would be in the money if we drop down to 6% on saving 3/4 of a point. 3/4 of a point is kind of like that, I kind of like a point or more, but 3/4 of a point is where, if you're going to stay for a long time, is where I guess you could argue it starts to make sense. ICE Mortgage Technology put out a study here, how many U.S. mortgage borrowers would be in the money based on each rate. So 6.25%, 1.5 million borrowers would be in the money. You could add 1.5 to that number. 6% add another 2.2 million. 5.75 add 3 million. 5.5 add 3.6. 5.25 add 4.1. 4.9, and so on. If it got down to 3.75, 8.8 million would be added to that. And if it got down to 3%, which, by the way, do not count on, do not plan for, do not promise, probably not going to happen. Bobby, I know you're disappointed. Not going to happen.
Deeply disappointed.
Yeah. Every time someone who just recently bought a house and I say that, they look at me like, why? Why do you have to say that? Because I
dated the rate and married the house, Byron. How could I go wrong?
You did not date the rate, because that was not the advice you were given. The advice you were given was, you've got a wife, stay married to her, be married to your house, and be happy. 3%, 14.3 million would be available for refi there. Here, there's the number of U.S. mortgage borrowers in the money to refinance in a chart. This will be available for BAMX members. You can grab this inside of school. All the charts I used today, dropping into the classroom on Hot Sheet, so you can use those. If you need to walk a buyer through the reality of kind of what's going on with rates, these are great. Here's your mortgage rate refi index, the lowest since the year 2000 right now. This one's always interesting. We get an update on this every couple months. Interest rate on outstanding mortgages. Okay. The above 6% is increasing. Okay. The greater than 6% is on the rise. That's going to create a loosening effect on some of these would-be sellers. Okay. Don't ignore someone in your market that just bought 2 years ago. Okay. They're maybe more likely to loosen up than that less than 3%. Okay. The less than 3% borrower is declining, while the greater than 6 and greater than 5 is increasing. Okay. So opportunity here, this segment of the market for listing, less of an opportunity here, but that demo is shrinking on the 3%. This chart's BAMX members, that chart's available for you in the Hot Sheet classroom inside of BAMX on school.com/BAMX. If you're not in yet, make sure you jump in there. All my notes, everything that I release here for the Hot Sheet, I drop available for you, as well as our weekly content drops. Just go into classroom here, Hot Sheet for these. Go to today. Every day that we do the Hot Sheet, drop all the relevant slides for you, as well as my notes, how we do the show, and everything else that supports the show. Tomorrow, live role play for members only. Myself, Tom Toole, Lisa Chinati, members only role play, 9:00 Eastern time, right before we jump into tomorrow's Hot Sheet. All right. So we've got inventory. By the way, replay is always available here on YouTube. If you missed inventory, It's always available, Apple and Spotify, for those that like to listen to the audio format, available there. But we got through the inventory. We got through this, what rates do, how many refis it'll impact. Let's get into the big news from Friday. We talked about it a lot last week as well. Congress has officially passed the bill that President Trump was advocating for. It's Trump's big, beautiful bill. Okay. So now that it's passed, here's what it means. Okay. Razor thin vote, 218 to 214 in the House. Trump had that, theoretical deadline that he wanted. He wanted a deadline of July 4th. He wanted to sign it on the 4th. He got his way again. That's kind of what happens when you have the Senate and the House, which he has one vote margin in the Senate, which was Vice President J.D. Vance as the tiebreaker, 218 to 214 in the House. The Congressional Budget Office projects the bill could add $3.3 trillion to the deficit over the next decade. Still, it delivers a long list of Trump's domestic priorities. 217 tax cuts permanent. That's a big deal. The tax cuts permanent, and launching a $150 billion missile defense program. We're going to get into what it means for homeowners. There's two schools of thought with this bill. One school, Secretary Scott Bessent, has said this bill is going to stimulate growth. That growth on GDP is going to outweigh the additions to the deficit. Okay. This is also what they call, a bill that, kind of to paraphrase, kind of deals with that tax break more so than it deals with cuts. I know there are cuts in this bill, and then there's additions to the deficit. But they also, proponents of this bill say, hey, we're going to be able to cut down the road. Now, I think the midterms are probably going to be dependent on that. Obviously, those that do not want this bill to move forward, the biggest reason why is that it will add to the deficit. Okay. Now, it remains to be seen how much growth it will stimulate in terms of adding to the deficit. Bobby, I don't know if you can find some of Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury. If you can find his, there's a quick 30-second clip I'd love to play if we can get it, on how he's thinking about the bill, and how he believes it's going to outpace, the additions to the deficit through GDP growth. All right. Here's what it means for homeowners in, Bobby, can you go back to share here if I could? Yeah, go for it. Here's what it means for homeowners in high tax states. Okay. This temporary expansion of SALT is something that you want to know about and pay attention to as a real estate professional. Okay. SALT, state and local tax, is a deduction cap. It's now increasing from $10,000 to $40,000, and it starts effectively now. It starts in 25, so taxes next year will reflect this. Okay, this was originally limited under 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. SALT deduction has disproportionately impacted homeowners in states like New York, Jersey, California. Under the new bill, the 40,000 cap lasts 5 years and begins to phase out for incomes over 500,000. The cap increases 1% annually through 2029. It returns to 10,000 in 2030. Okay, here's what Realtor.com chief economist Joel Berner pointed out, that the higher deduction could help some owners move up. Okay, suppose someone owns $1 million home, decided to put the all tax savings in the monthly mortgage payment for their next home. That's $7,000 per year. That would increase their home price budget to about $1.1 million, or simple math, 10% on the home. Okay. There, you either take the tax savings, put it in your pocket as the homeowner, or you can buy more home, is what the Realtor.com economist is saying. Beyond tax saving, the SALT deduction could unlock buyer power. Okay, so putting $7,000 in tax savings through towards a new mortgage could increase the buyer's budget by roughly 10%.
Is this what you're looking for, Byron?
That is, and it looks like Trump talking there.
It's a headline, but it's Besant's comments on what.
Yeah, I was really looking. There's a clip going around X. I don't know if you can find it or not. If you can't, it's not a big deal. In a statement, Realtor.com senior chief economist Jake Krimmel noted this would impact the most. Okay. The SALT cap going from 10K to 40K will have the greatest impact on homeowners in areas with the highest state and local taxes. Okay, those in the most expensive homes. An additional $30,000 in deduction could amount to $10,500 in annual savings for such homeowners, assuming 35% federal tax rate. While the deduction provides tax relief for higher income homeowners, it may also affect certain local housing markets. Raising the SALT cap increase greater incentive to own an expensive high tax neighborhoods such as affluent suburbs with high property taxes, good schools. The demand for these neighborhoods rises. So you could see some of these neighborhoods continue to rise in price over the next 2-3 years. Jersey here's the analysis of the state's highest share of homes taxed over $10,000 annually include. So if you're in these states, here's where you could have the biggest benefit. Jersey, New York, Connecticut, where I'm sitting, California, Massachusetts. Here are the 10 metros most likely to benefit: San Jose, New York, New Jersey, Jersey City, Manhattan Metro there, San Francisco, Bridgeport, Stamford, basically Fairfield County, that stretch of the shoreline in Connecticut from Bridgeport to Stamford. You got Newburgh, New York. Maybe I got that right. Newburgh. Thank you, Bobby. My resident New Yorker. Newburgh, New York. Trenton, Princeton area. Nantucket. Okay, Nantucket's a very small market. Austin, though, in the mix for the 10 most like. Austin's affordable. I like seeing an affordable metro on there. Jackson, and Jackson, Wyoming, and then Santa Cruz, California on the list. Bobby, do you have it? Yeah, that's the one.
That's it?
Yeah, if you can share it, get me off the share here.
1 sec. Hold on. I'm gonna do some.
And if we can get that up, which we will here in a second.
Movie magic. Please hold.
This is Scott Bessent on Fox News Sunday. I was working yesterday. I guess Treasury Secretary also working on Sunday. This is from his official X account. He says for years, working class Americans were told that unchecked immigration, blah, blah, blah. That was fall. All right, let's go into his paraphrasing of the big, beautiful bill.
What we saw was this mass unfettered immigration across the border, whether it's 12 or 22 million people who came in, suppressed working people's wages. And for 20 years, the big lie was that this kind of immigration didn't hurt working people. Now,
yeah, this isn't the right clip.
Have come out.
That's not the right clip. I don't need all the pining on immigration.
Could be it. This is Medicaid. This is from his Twitter.
All right, go to the CNN one. Go to that CNN one. That could be it. I think that might be it. Go to the CNN one, which was the Medicaid one. Yeah, go to that one.
Only in DC is a 20% hike over 10 years, a cut. So Medicaid funding will go up 20% over the next 10 years. The people who Medicaid were designed for, the pregnant women.
All right.
No,
get out of there. Get out of this.
Get
out of Scott Bessent.
You don't want to talk about Medicaid cuts on the hot sheet?
I don't want to get into it. People are very emotional about Medicaid cuts. What he probably goes on to say is that, like, if you're able-bodied and working and you work, you're going to get your Medicaid. If you're able-bodied and not working, you probably, listen, I'm not an expert in that kind of stuff. There was a clip, and I'll just paraphrase it, where he talks about the growth this bill's going to stimulate. And if you get to a 3% GDP growth, 3%, adding to the deficit, then you even it out. They're claiming that this is going to grow. Only time is going to tell. There's arguments from nonpartisan people. I don't like to listen to the partisan people on both sides. But there are arguments from nonpartisans that, yeah, this is going to stimulate a ton of growth. If the tax increase, which was going to kick in here at the end of the year, happened, that certainly would reduce growth. And reducing GDP growth at a time when you have a high deficit is not good. It's very hard to get Congress to reduce spending. And so there you have it. Here are some of the other real estate wins. NAR's Big Five wins: permanent extension of the lower individual tax rates, which I just mentioned, permanent 20% qualified business income deduction, independent contracts, small business owners. This includes agents, real estate agents, the permanent 20% qualified business income deduction. If your CPA is not on it, get on it. This quadrupling of the SALT deduction cap. I mean, if you work a higher price point, if you're looking to get into a higher price point, bang, zoom. That's a big deal. Protection of business SALT deductions like 1031 like-kind exchanges. Big deal for real estate investors. There's a ton packed in here that is good for real estate. I think 2026 could be our first feel like a boom after coming out of real estate recession for the real estate industry. 2026 could be game on. Permanent mortgage interest deduction. It's widely used. Homeowner tax breaks. And then there's a whole bunch of other benefits that you can jump into on nowbam.com. Here are a few takeaways for conversations. The expanded SALT tax, owning more attractive in states where high property taxes. Buyers who are on the fence about trading up, budget flexibility to make the move. And then builders, investors now have incentives to develop housing packed into this bill. So a few features there. All right. Starting the week here on the 10-year, we're starting a little bit higher than where we were just 5 days ago. And we're at 4.368. So a little bit of a move up here over the last month, relatively speaking, under the highs, but off of the lows on the 10-year. We did see the 30-year move up slightly to end the week. 6.75 last week is where we went into the holiday weekend. Mortgage Banker Association 30-year fixed weekly came in at 6.79 and 6.67 on the Freddie Mac weekly. So we trended down for a couple of weeks. Remember, stock market hit all-time high just last week. The big bill is something that's going to stimulate growth. What it does to the deficit down the road is a question mark, but it's going to stimulate growth. There are more mergers and acquisitions happening in the last couple months than we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of, investors in Wall Street, not consumer confidence, but investors in Wall Street that are really bullish about these next 12, 18 months. 2026 could be a big year. If the rates start to drop, you could really see how things could take off. The Fed has a lot of pressure to drop rates. 95% chance, according to CME Group, that they will not cut in the July meeting. And Polymarket, where everyday people bet on this stuff, says same thing, 95% no change. 50% chance that there will be a 25 basis point cut in September. Strong job data indicates that, hey, probably won't see this cut. To jump in and get all the benefits that BAMX members do, it's on school.com/BAMX, SKOOL.com/BAMX. You get all of our weekly content drops, hyper local content, all of the email scripts, including your 3-phase marketing strategy. All BAMX members get Zudilio platform included, and now Mosaic's platform included in the membership. That's like a 4,000, 5,000 when you combine those two savings, all for $97 a month or $970 a year. You get access, obviously, to the Hot Sheet Classroom, where I drop in all of the day's data from every hot sheet, as well as exclusive live role plays like the one we're doing tomorrow morning, members only, myself, Tom Toole, Lisa Chinati, school.com/BAMX. We're only a week and a half away from our mega virtual event, third of the year, BAM BBQ. It's a free virtual event. Register now. These fill up, and once they're capped out, there's nothing we can do about it. July 16th, next Wednesday, 12 to 2 Eastern, 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. We've got 3 CEOs bringing the heat middle of the summer. Leo Pereira, EXP CEO, Ryan Serhant Technology CEO, and Scott Harris, Experience.com CEO. Myself, Eric Simon, the broke agent, will be manning the grill, moderating those discussions. That's bambbq.live. Grab your spot today. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the hot sheet. Have a great kickoff to your week. Until then, of course, toodaloo.